Pretty bird.
With Light and Easy.
Because God is doing an intercession and they are subservient to the God Most High.
I jump ahead to see the audio.
Power and secrecy walk hand in hand. If you can expose the secrecy, you might break the power. The logic of journalism has been overwhelmed by the logic of commercialism.
To attack journalism wasn't exactly.
Hi Phil, hi Di.
Nobody likes
This isn't right, guys. Hang on.
Some of the time.
And only scratch the surface. We have to meet.
hacking phones of the news of the world has been endemic. More than 130 people have had their phones hacked. And this is just the tip of a very, very big iceberg. There is an industry making huge profit.
We're going to talk about how prehistory, the giants, the Nephilim shaped in time.
Okay, straight.
The giants, which are these offspring of the fallen angels, they
Hi, Johnny.
described as serpents. But this is also telling us that this bloodline is going to be with us throughout history.
Yeah.
So somehow, some way, we're going to be dealing with the giants and the ramifications of the fallen angels that has been plaguing us ever since.
We see that he goes and he speaks to these spirits. But then we see in the book of Revelation, they will be released in the time of tribulation.
Not even the fallen angels know what the end game for God is going to be until the conversation that Jesus has with them. From that point on, the fallen angels know the gig is up. Just Jesus and the disciples, they travel up to the Bashan region. And Bashan is called the land of giants.
There you go. I never
Herman
knew that.
is not well discussed within the church, and it's probably the most important place on the earth for polytheism. So one of the relationships in the first allegory is that these beast empires have an intimate relationship with Israel.
And of
Why
course,
is it
that would
meant
be the
like
shock
that?
for a lot of Jews, because then they will realize when he really reveals himself, oh, this is not the Messiah.
So I could bring somebody back from the dead from Abraham's
I mean, he
bosom,
has a lie right in front of me.
and then he raised Lazarus from the dead who was
Thank
asleep
you.
because he's human, right?
Still
and nobody
crooked. Why is it
obviously
crooked?
believed him. When we look at the chronology that Jesus provides in Matthew 24, there's a specific generation that we're not taught about in the church. The people living in the land of the covenant at that time will be permitted to begin their sacrifices again, which cannot happen
Hey, okay, that seems to be the best angle.
while Islam is still separate from universal religion.
You can see some of those things happening already, even with the Catholic Church. They just want to include all other religions.
Surely they're saying that Charlie Kirk is a shot heard around the world, and that comes from World War One. I think Duke Fernando got assassinated, and that's what started World War One. Is Yugoslavian.
Religions already, and being more open to be okay with everything. There's going to be this millennium kingdom, and then after that, the devil's going to be released, but he's going to gather the whole world again. So I think a lot of people also wonder, how is that possible after Jesus' perfect reign on earth? How could that be?
Good question.
Hey guys, welcome back to DLM Lifestyle. Today we have a very interesting video for you guys. We're going to go back. We're going to talk about how prehistory, the giants, the Nephilim shaped in time prophecy. And I actually brought in a special guest, someone who wrote the book about it. You can see it right here. Gary Wayne, welcome.
Well, thank you for inviting me back, and so happy to be here today, and so happy to talk about some of the things in book 2 versus book 1, even though they dovetail quite nicely. And I think some of the things we're going to talk about today, particularly for Christians, and particularly that book 2.
Guys, that angle, that's not because of me. That's them. Look, doesn't matter straighten it up. It still does that gut, you know, try to do that. Watch. Okay. Where in the heck can this go?
Is directed directly at Christians and goes deeper into the Bible than I think any other book.
Okay, I can't change that angle, guys. It's not me, it's them.
That's out there. It is totally unique, and it will make the Old Testament come to life, and it'll make end-time prophecy.
I'm talking about the bottom of the TV. It's got a curve in it. Usually hasn't got a curve in it.
Seem straightforward.
Right. And I can say he's not joking around here. I read some of the book and I talked to him a little bit. This is going to get interesting. So let's just jump right into this. But for those of you who might not know Gary Wynn, he spent 45 years researching biblical prophecy, history, and mythology, uncovering the interesting mysteries of the Bible. He also spent a lot of time with the Gnostic scriptures, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, and Rig Vedas, the Popol Vuh, Epic of Gilgamesh, even the Ugaritic texts and other ancient epics, and also language, etymology, and secret society publications. Now, we believe 100% what the Bible says, but it is interesting to study all of these other things as well, ancient history, and see how it connects with the Bible. Now, the 2 books that you can get, please get these books. It is super interesting. The first book is Genesis 6 Conspiracy, How Secret Societies and the Descendants of Giants Plan to Enslave Humankind. The second book, our title for today, the Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 2, How Understanding Prehistory and Giants Help Define End Time Prophecy. Now, if you don't mind, Gary, I'm going to start it off here with a Bible verse that a lot of people maybe miss, and go back to Genesis when God talked to the devil, and he said in Genesis 3, verse 15, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, and he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel.
Twist these as well.
Yeah, I was going to. Don't call me back.
So already there's these 2 lines coming here because there's seeds. And I'm going to leave it to you, Gary, to explain it so that people can get to know you. Go for it.
Yeah, so that's what I call the first prophecy. And so you get obviously the first that's going to happen to the serpent, and the implications and the consequences for the actions in Eden and participating with Satan and or perhaps even more of the fallen angels to what I call in book 1 call enact Satan's first revenge. And this is now referencing a second revenge, as that's going to be fulfilled. And the serpent is the Hebrew word Nahash.
No,
it means
not
a serpent.
quite.
And it's also rooted in another word that's called Nahash. That means a sorcerer, a necromancer, all of these terms that we would associate with wizards and priests of the occult. So this walking, talking, intelligent being is a being that's already in place and is working with fallen angels, and particularly Satan, to bring down humanity. And now we get this very bizarre sort of something that would drive cognizant dissonance, no matter how you're going to look at that. And it's so early on in the Bible, and yet most people,
when it's crooked, it really annoys me.
will just sort of, and as I did, just sort of, as you're reading through the Bible, say, well, whatever that is, I don't want anything to do with it. Of course, you get a lot of that in the Bible because it's the most preternatural book that was ever written. And so when we look at this serpent, I mean, we're not saying that this serpent that is going to create a seed specifically with Eve in that instance because it's a prophecy. And it's a curse prophecy, just as when you get into the curse of Ham, the curse is going to play out with Canaan, who's not even born yet. And it's a curse prophecy. It's a style of prophecy that is in the Old Testament. And there are different styles of prophecies, but this one's really unique and it happens so early on. It's probably the first prophecy. You could look at a few things with the introduction of Adam as prophetic, and I think it has prophetic implications, but this is a specific prophecy. So it's not saying that there's going to be seed created from this walking, talking, intelligent being that's taller than humankind.
Whether you turn it, launch it, floor it, send it, catch it, beach it, more of it. You love it. So get insurance that's a bit more U-shaped. You insured.
Introducing the pristine paradise of Palau. Add this trending destination to your travel radar with our exclusive holiday packages on sale now. Perfectly packaged with up to $3,300 bonus value.
They're the generation on the dial.
Vincent, this is a rotary phone. Have you seen this before?
How did you do prank calls growing up? I think we just had friends.
Your gen's back at 7:30 tonight.
Running empty's a bit of a pain. At Origin, we're helping
With Eve, and it's not talking about the species as we understand the serpent today that would be, slimy and crawling on the ground that's going to meet with Eve. This is
Right, all
talking
the
about
pictures.
something in the future. Yeah. And these are
Yeah.
bloodlines of sentient beings. And this is the end of the Nahash being a sentient being and all of its various kinds, however many kinds that there were. So we don't get a lot of descriptions biblically as to who might be the serpent, except that we get seraphim angels in Isaiah 6, which are six-winged angels. They work before the altar of God in the firing stones. And seraph or seraphim, as in the plural, means a fiery or copper-colored serpent-faced angel, a heavenly dragon, as in a dragon creator god, as in the serpent gods that populate the ancient pantheons. And so when they took a physical body, they're going to pass on this DNA.
Wow.
And we talked previously of how that happens and how we get biblical support that angels can take physical forms and how this DNA is passed on. So they would pass on what they looked like. So in antediluvian times and early post-diluvian times,
Come on,
the
man.
giants, which are these offspring of the fallen angels, sons of God, that we covered off in part 1, they are described as
Come on, man. Come
serpents
on.
in both before the flood and early after the flood. So this is the fulfillment of that. But this is also telling us that this bloodline is going to be with us throughout history, throughout all our history. It's going to be a competing bloodline. And so for people who aren't sure that bloodlines are actually in the Bible, it is. And we get in Daniel 2:43 prophecy that concerns the seed line that's going to mix with humankind. And Psalms 21, 8 through 10, that is talking about this bloodline that is going to be removed from humankind, that their seed will be removed and their fruit will be removed from humankind in the end time, in the time of the wrath of God. So this has been with us from the beginning and to the end, and we're told about it from the beginning when it is prophesied and then fulfilled in Genesis 6.
Yeah. Maybe we can read that Genesis 6 verse 4 for new Christians as well, who are like, what are you guys talking about? What is this Nephilim? Maybe we can read that to them very
Charlie Kirk really makes you involved. That's Civil War, guys. I think you guys are in Civil War. This is getting really heavy, isn't it?
quick. I'll read it for them very quick here.
Sure.
It says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, meaning after the flood, when the sons of God, the angels there, came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown.
Yeah, it's a very, very important passage, and these early passages set down the whole context for the history that's going to play out in the Old Testament right through to the end time. So it's really sort of shocking to people once you start to come to this realization that there's giants that are real, right, that were born, which is difficult to comprehend at first as well, particularly how we're not prepared for that understanding within the churches, even though it's giving us the context of why we're here and what's going on in this world. And that this seed line, this bloodline is going to be resolved only in the end time.
Yeah.
So somehow, some way, we're going to be dealing with the giants and the ramifications of the fallen angels who created this spurious, non-permitted bloodline that has been plaguing us ever since. And we get another allusion to this bloodline in Isaiah 14, in the famous passage that tells us important information about prehistory, has important prophecies for the time of Isaiah, but has specific prophecies unfulfilled for the end time. And it's, I coin it just for my own understanding, what I call a dual prophecy. Again, a unique kind of prophecy, one of the different kinds, just as Ezekiel 28 would be another one. And Ezekiel 32 and Isaiah 25, they're all unique prophecies in that sort of way. When we look at this prophecy in Isaiah 14, we have this serpent's root that's being manifested in a seraphim somehow, some way in Isaiah 14, 25 through 29, where you have the Assyrian who's going to be dealt with on the mountains of Israel in the end time. So that's part of that dual prophecy where you have those prophecies yet to be fulfilled. And on that mountain, on the mountains, that the Assyrian is going to be killed, as Revelation 19 describes, along with the false prophet.
Wow, boy.
This is when the branch of the terrible ones of Ezekiel 32 that we talked about just a second ago.
Wow, that link died that we're already at war with Russia. I thought China would sneak A first.
Part of one of these dual prophecies will be destroyed on a mountain, which is likely going to be Mount Hermon. And Mount Hermon is not well discussed within the church, and it's probably the most important place on the earth for polytheism. And it was originally part of Eden, as it sits at the top. As you look at the description in Genesis 2 of Eden, it goes from the Nile to the Euphrates. And by the other descriptions that you're going to see and understanding, it's going to be from basically Mount Hermon and the mountains in the north down to the Red Sea, Sea of Aqaba, Indian Ocean type of waters, to give you the four goalposts on that. And that it would have overseen Eden. And this is their most holiest mountain in polytheism, and it's one that is talked about in the Bible. And Mount Hermon is rooted in the Hebrew word haram, and haram, Charem, Charam, and they mean cursed and accursed, because this is the accursed mountain, although it was considered at one time the holy mountain. So it was like an oath in the eye to God, in the mountain over Eden, to take the oath of Haram anathema. Notice that word haram.
Yeah.
Anathema, that is going to be sworn by the fallen angels, the 200 original ones according to the book of Enoch. Not that they created the giants there, but they took the oath to carry it out to the end, no matter what the consequences. And biblically, Haram is the name that is a replacement name for that we get Hermon from, and it is alternatively called in the Bible Mount Sion, Mount Shinir, and Sirion, and in the Ugaritic texts where it talks about the Baalim and the Rephaim giants, this is Mount Saphon. So it was known by many different names, and Mount Nippur in the Sumerian version, where the Council of the Gods and the Council or the Ring Lords of the Giants, and in the Ugaritic text called the Council of the Titanu, were also there, which is the Council of the Royal Giants, Dynastic Giants, and then above them that they report to is the Council of the Gods. So it is an important mountain and important part of the gift of the land that God is going to give to Israel. And then you may ensure that that gift is fulfilled in the millennium, as many of the Old Testament prophecies talk about.
Yeah, we're getting into some interesting things here. And you can see how that idea of the mountain of the gods spread to other cultures as well, like the Greeks with Mount Olympus.
Yeah, there are arguably 7 to 9 holy mountains around the world as you get into the polytheist accounts. Many of them seem to be talking about one mountain, so there could be like branch mountains. And and that was not uncommon in polytheism. And so the best sort of relevance I would make to that is in the 7 hills or mountains of Rome that Romulus and Remus settled in, offspring of the god Ares and progenitors of the Julia gens of the 100 Roman senator bloodlines. Palatine Hill was probably the most important hill from a religious perspective, and it had a branch hill called Vaticanus Hill that the Vatican was built on. So mountains and branch mountains of the same belief system is not unusual. And if you're having different civilizations, and just as you have 7 to 9, depending on which numbers you want to use and which accounts you want to use, there are 7 wandering stars. You also have Satan and possibly his consort that add 2 more on to get to 9. And you have these cultures that are going to require an imagery of that type of mountain. So it's going to be a constant. And they use those constants throughout polytheism, which is why you see pyramids, which is a replication of a holy mountain, which makes it such a holy place, and probably a technology as well, as we learn more about some of these things. And you see these constants in building styles. You see these constants in the religion, just different vernacular names for the gods. You see the constant in the accounting of prehistory, counting of the flood. Everything is similar. So we're talking about one great civilization that may have sections or sects to it, and ruled over by different gods within the pantheon as part of their allotment, just as Deuteronomy 32 talks about this allotment of the 70 nations that are numbered in Exodus 1:5 by the sons of Jacob or Israel, and the 70 patriarchs that are listed in the Table of Nations in 1 Chronicles and Genesis 10.
How to escape the heat if you don't have an air conditioner.
It's smaller than a lunchbox, cools any room within 3 minutes, and uses 98.7% less energy.
I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but maybe we can just, while we are discussing the mountain and the importance of it, and as we look at throughout the generations, that there were these gods, Nephilim, that claimed to be the kings, and they ruled over it. We see throughout history, every time there were kings, important kings, that they claimed to be gods, even in the time of Jesus. So there's an important message here of why Jesus asked that question to Peter as well. But who do you say I am? And he said, but you are the Son of God. But Gary, maybe you can explain a little bit just the context here for people to understand where they were and why he asked this question.
Yeah, and we talked about how important Mount Hermon is, and just Jesus and the disciples, they travel up to the Bashan region, which is the area below Mount Hermon, and Bashan is called the land of giants. in the Bible. Rapha is the Hebrew word there. And so, like Edrei and Ashtaroth were the capitals of King Og's 60 Pentapolis city-states that were in the Bashan region. And there's other nations in there as well. But this area that Jesus and the disciples traveled to is Mount Hermon. So why travel there? It's like, that's a long ways to go from the Galilee or from Jerusalem. But they did it. And it's Jesus announces with Peter that he's going to build his church on that rock. And Peter has his name changed, meaning rock, right? That he's going to be the rock of the church, just as Jesus is the supernatural rock to the church.
Right.
And they're going to the place where the council of the gods that we just talked about centered at, in the council of the Ditanit, as the Ugaritic text calls this assembly of the royales that was there at Mount Saphon or Mount Sion or Mount Hermon. And so they're announcing, Jesus is announcing to the gods who rule this earth. The Psalms 82 talks about the council of the gods, that Satan sits above, to counterfeit the imagery in Isaiah 14 that we also talked about of God's throne in heaven. Because everything polytheism does is counterfeit or copy. And so this is the location that would represent where Baal ruled from. Baal and the Baalim gods that rule in this council in the Bible. And that Baal would go back and forth between earth and heaven every day through the gateway to Hades, or the cave that's located at the bottom of Mount Hermon to Hades. And it's a worldwide known shrine even to this day. And the Pan Temple was located there as well, which is right beside that cave. And so Jesus is announcing to the ruling council of the gods that has rights over this earth, just as not that long ago, in the time of Jesus, Satan showed Jesus all the different empires of the earth and offered it to him because he had legal right to at that point in time. And Jesus was in a very weakened sort of state as he was fasting for 40 days in the wilderness. And so Jesus has just announced to them that he is going to build his church. And with the starting of building that church, and with what the angels do not know at this point in time, because they're going to have him crucified, the princes, the archons, are going to have Jesus crucified. And had they known about the resurrection.
I was just thinking about that guy. The 23rd's coming up quick. I got a mouthful of chewing gum.
They would not have done that, as First Corinthians talks about, that this is the start of that march towards the resolution to the angelic rebellion through the resurrection. And he's announcing he's going to build that to take that to the world through the rock, Peter. And he's going to build his church upon that. So this is an extraordinary event, probably the most important event in humankind's history. And something big is going to be following, and that's going to be the crucifixion and the resurrection, and the ability to give us that gift to become like the sons of God. That is given to us at the time of Pentecost in Acts 2 as a promise. Even though we have human fathers, to be raised up like angels in the future time through the resurrection process. There's several resurrections, as it's described in the New Testament and the Old Testament. And that we will be not only like angels, but we will also judge those fallen angels for the crimes they committed against us and against creation. And so this gets to be a significant event. And when you start to place that now in context with 1 Peter 3, where it's talking about Jesus after he's been crucified, and his physical body has been killed, and he is in his could be in his spirit form, could be in his body form. We're not told, but he is in Hades or Sheol, and he goes to a place where the spirits are imprisoned. These are the fallen angels, both before and after the flood, that created the giants and did the worst things to humankind. And these are also, as are in the sides of the pit prison in Ezekiel 32, the terrible one. These are the worst of the giant, the offspring of the fallen angels. And he's speaking to them. Now, we're not told what he says to them, but within 3 days, he's going to be resurrecting. So we know it's going to have something probably to do with that. It's going to have something to do with the crimes that they did. And he's communicating with them. And my speculation is he is saying, just as I said I was building my church and announced that at Mount Hermon, I am now telling you something that you didn't know, that I'm going to resurrect on the Sunday. And when I do, your rebellion is over, because through that resurrection process, we're going to adopt humankind as my brothers and raise them up to be like angels and above angels as the inheritors of eternity. So this relationship is even being discussed in the greatest of terms in the New Testament in the time of Jesus, and we don't get any context to these events taught in the churches.
You're right. And it is so important, because a lot of people say, well, we're all children of God. No, we're
Was he Christian, Diane? Charlie Kirk, was he Christian?
not. The New Testament says that only those who accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior has the right to become children of God, right?
Yes.
So there's all these details that you need to connect with all the verses. But I want to focus in on the end times as well, because we see that he goes and he speaks to these spirits. But then we see in the book of Revelation, they will be released in the time of tribulation, right? Which is, I don't want to be there at that time. But I want to go back to those same spirits to help people to understand why they are locked up in the pit. So I want to go back a little bit, because they overstep the boundaries, right? And those are the spirits we read about in Genesis 6, verse 4. So if we can start with Genesis 6, verse 4, move from there to explain how the fallen angels created the Nephilim. After that, the flood, that they were there as well, and then reigned over the world, establishing their kingdoms for centuries. And what happened 2,000 years ago, and from there to where we are now, and then to what's going to happen in the end times.
There's a lot to cover there, so we'll try and move fairly quickly on this to get the information. And so in Genesis 6:4, the sons of God go to the daughters of men to create giants, as the KJV says. The Hebrew word is Nephil. Nephilim is the plural, and this means a tribe of giants. It means a giant. It means also a tyrant and a bully, which are just more descriptions in terms of who these giants are, just as in the Ugaritic text that we were talking about, or in Sumeria and elsewhere around the world, the gods are called bulls, and so are their offspring, the giants. And so when we hear about the bulls of Bashan that are mocking Jesus on the cross in the book of Psalms, these are the two groups that are being talked about. And tyrant goes back to the bloodline kings, because the Nephilim take over the kingship dynasties both before and after the flood. So that is the tyrant is Tyrannos, as it was known in the Greek. And these were the Gyges kings, and these were bloodlines from, in their belief system, the Olympian gods. So, from Hercules, son of Zeus, and the human female alchemy after the flood. So we need to understand that these giants were real, and they took over the dynasties and the governorship and established polytheism all around the earth before the flood, which is why the flood is brought. And the technology that they had comes from the fallen angels, and that had the capability, I think, that had the capability to destroy the world by fire, which wasn't permitted. That reserved, according to 2 Peter 3, for the end time. So God permits the flood to come, brings the flood, or orders the fallen angels to bring the flood themselves, as it's recorded in all the polytheist accounts, as part of the punishment, I think, to watch their offspring die because God is doing an intercession and they're subservient to the God Most High, so that all the names in the book of life will have
I'm glad if he's a Christian, die.
an opportunity to keep those names
If he was a Christian, he sort of went as a martyr, didn't he?
that were written in before creation or have it blotted out. So it's an intercession. And then this crosses the flood. These organizations, and we talked about this in part one of the two shows, and that Nimrod is the first sort of king over the Noahites and introduces the Babel religion, which is the antediluvian religion. But he's also going to intermarry amongst these giants in Sumer, and that's one of the reasons why we don't get his genealogy thereafter recorded in the Table of Nations. And so you're going to create this hybrid race of humans and giants after the flood, and the giants after the flood, the Rephaim versus the Nephilim, which is used 25 times in the Old Testament versus Nephilim, which is only used 3 times. And the Nephilim are antediluvian, and Rephaim tend to be more post-diluvian, although I do leave a small crack open for giants surviving the flood. But second incursion by the offspring gods, as we talked about part 1, the Baalim Council biblically, at Mount Hermon biblically, are the ones who created the Rephaim giants. And we see Rephaim in Genesis 14 and Genesis 15 as giant tribes. We also see where it says, whether it's in Deuteronomy 2 or the times of David, where it says giant, that's the Hebrew word Rapha. And Rephaim is as the plural.
Hey guys, I really hope you're enjoying the video so far, but I have some big and exciting news to share. I'm writing a novel with my brother set in the world before the flood. It's going to feel like a mix of fantasy and historical fiction, much like Lord of the Rings, Warcraft, or Narnia. But here's the best part. It is based on biblical and archaeological truths. In this book, we're diving deep into the ancient world of fallen angels, the Nephilim, and the family lines of Adam, specifically Seth and Cain. You'll get to experience how they live in cities like Nippur and Eridu, how they fell into darkness, and how they became so evil in a world filled with beasts and dragons like the Behemoth and Leviathan, described in the book of Job. If you've ever wondered what the world was like before the flood, in the antediluvian world, then this novel is going to bring it to life in a way you've never seen before. It's packed with action, spiritual battles, and deep insights into humanity's early struggles. It answers the biggest questions of humanity. Why are we here? What is the meaning of life? And where are we going when we die? And here's the exciting part. I'm giving you, all my amazing subscribers, exclusive access to the first 4 chapters of the novel for free. Just click the link in the video description, enter your name, email, and we'll send it to you. Now, if you're watching this video much later, this book might already be out. And then you can just grab it at any of our websites, at DLN Christian Lifestyle or Ruach Entertainment. Now, this book is perfect for unbelievers and even for those on the fence when it comes to their faith, because it's a gripping story that pulls you in, and before you know it, you will see how it aligns with the truth in God's Word, the Bible. Now, thank you for sticking with me. Let's get back to the message of today.
And we see Rephaim in Genesis 14 and Genesis 15 as a giant tribe. We also see where it says, whether it's in Deuteronomy 2 or the times of David, where it says giant, that's the Hebrew word Rapha. and Rephaim as the plural. So
Right.
the giants take over the dynasties again, set up just as they did before the flood. The first two classes with humans populating the small entrepreneurial class of blacksmiths and tailors, and then the slave and working class at the fourth level. And that's a constant around the world, both before and after the flood, in all cultures, all continents around the world. And so these are the ones that are ruling over us and trying to destroy us, because that's why they were created, so that we do not reach our destiny. So this pitched battle rages from the time of after the flood. Again, it resurges from the time of Noah to the time of Jesus. It's raging.
Right.
And even that, all through that part, not even the fallen angels know what the end game for God is going to be until the conversation that Jesus has with them, well, in Hades and Sheol and at the pit prison. And so from that point on, the fallen angels know the gig is up, but they continue to mislead their spurious offspring that they can still win and that they will achieve their goal. And they're out, and the fallen angels' only goal is to destroy as many so that they don't follow God and become saved. And so this is what has been transpiring from the time of Jesus till now. And there's a set time when all of this comes to a close in the end time.
Yeah.
And so all of these players, organizations, and agendas are in place as part of context for the end time. So we have to sort of make those connections if we want to understand that we're not just fighting the visible ones, we're fighting the invisible ones. And it's the invisible ones that are calling the shots, because the visible ones, the spurious offspring and the followers, are communicating with their superior celestial white masters, as they might be called, spirit guides, aliens. You name the different things who they're communicating with, it's all part of the rebellious hierarchy that is trying to create a Star Wars event where you have the rebels fighting against the evil God of the universe, which is that rendezvous with destiny they want to bring on, because the fallen angels are still lying to humans and the hybrids that they can win this battle, that they can win their freedom to have a realm on their own where the gods can walk amongst them again, and they can create new demigods going into the future. So that's the ambition. And one of the things that's important to understand in some of the context in the New Testament is that you do not hear about fallen angels, Old Testament or New Testament, who are slandering God or celestial beings. Even Michael, when he's dealing with Satan, is very careful in the words. That, he basically, and they're dealing with Moses' body, which is another interesting story. But all Michael does is basically say, God rebuke you, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything else, but he institutes his authority to reclaim Moses away from Satan. And that's part of the upbringing of Moses. I don't have really time to go into today, but God knew all of this was going to happen, and he's trumping Satan's legal case to the oaths that Moses would have sworn at Heliopolis as being raised as a royale into the mystery religions and becoming an adept of those religions before he's converted back. But that's part of God's plan. So
that'll make it easier for the kids and the wife, won't it, Phil? I'm glad he's a Christian.
Fallen angels use the spurious offspring and their descendants and those who follow their religions to slander God, to slander celestial beings, to slander Jesus. But they don't do it themselves because they know the power of God. So they're working through as avatars, allegorically through their avatars. And I'm not saying that's not a real possibility, in that because they can become an avatara to an avatar and expect that to be part of Antichrist. and where he gets his power from. And there's a difference between the Avatara and the Avatar. Avatara is the fallen angel like Vishnu, who entered into Buddha to give him the wisdom, or as Satan entered into Judas to give him the courage to go through with the betrayal of Jesus. And so the one who receives that, posts that spirit into him to give them more knowledge, power, whatever the gift will be, is the Avatar, with an A at the end.
Ooh, wow. We're going through this very quick, guys. I hope you're keeping up with us. But if you want to go back a little bit, because we discussed some of the tribes and everything before and right after the flood as well. So please watch that first video. And
Phil, do you think he was a martyr? It sounds like it, doesn't it?
a lot of what we discuss here will be a bit more clear. But Gary, I want you to continue, and just people, everybody watching, just breathe a little bit.
Breath, yes. So when we want to look at now end-time prophecy, and we tend to look as Christians through the New Testament prophecies versus the host of the ones in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we don't get the original Hebrew, we get Greek. So we have to look at the Greek language and look for sort of cognate terms that would be in the Hebrew of the Old Testament to make some connections, especially when it comes to all the players. Certainly when we see angels that are fallen angels as we would know them, and Nephilim, fallen one, as that would be in Hebrew, come out of the pit prison in Revelation 9 just before the midpoint of the last 7 years, 6 months to a year and a half before the midpoint of the last 7 years. And people want to know where I get that last 7 years. Daniel 9:27, where you have that last week of years of the 70 weeks is reserved to play out, to fulfill all vision and prophecy and bring in the age of righteousness and the Messiah, is reserved for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
The book of Revelation is split into 2-3.5 year portions. With
Yeah, I agree, Phil. He is a martyr, because if he wasn't a Christian, they wouldn't have attacked him so hard. So God bless him. I agree. He was a martyr.
the commission of the 144,000 and the two witnesses, marked by 3.5 years in Revelation 11. And then we get 3.5 years for the reign of Antichrist in Revelation 13 that follows, and also numbered by in Revelation 12 after the abomination, when the people of Judea flee to the wilderness to be protected for 3.5 years. So everything lines up once we sort of put the passages together. But if it's going to be like the days of Noah, that means the angels have to walk amongst us, and that's the fallen ones.
Yeah.
And they have to be ruling again, sort of visibly. That also means that their religion has to be established. It also means that their spirit's offspring has to be more visible, either through descendants, survival of giants somehow, some way with angelic help, or recreation of the giants, but that they're still going to be here. And that's the seed line that we referenced early on that's going to be dealt with at the time of Armageddon. And so how do we recognize these? So if we look at the Old Testament, we have some interesting prophecies in Joel 1, 2, and 3, and Ezekiel 38 and 39, which are very, very important in terms of some of the terms. And in those terms, we get two wars in Joel 1 and 2. We get a war there that's distinct from the one that's going to come, which is the day of the Lord and the wrath of the Lord in Joel 3. And this includes mighty ones.
Yeah, Shawnee, I hadn't heard of him up until 3 days ago myself.
In Ezekiel 38 and 39, we get this great war that's going to happen in the last days. So it's distinct from the one from Revelation 20, which is 1,000 years later. And we know the timing of it's going to be before an event that Christians may not be aware of called the Second Exodus, where Israel and Judah will be in the last 3.5 years reconciled back into the covenant by recognizing Jesus as their Messiah and led in Second Exodus to the wilderness to be joined back together. And as Daniel 12 and Ezekiel 37 also discuss, this is the resurrection and the judgment of Israel separate from the church. This needs to be done and is being completed in the year of the Lord's favor, talked about in Isaiah and in the book of Luke, before the year of the Lord's wrath, in time for reconciliation into the bride at the supper of the Lamb in Revelation 19. And this is the time of trouble in Daniel 12, which is the time of Jacob's trouble that Jacob will be saved out of. And Ezekiel 30 and 31 are second Exodus passages. And there's many second Exodus passages, and most Christians aren't aware of this because it's not taught. And that God said that if you didn't follow the covenant, we won't complete things through the blessings of the covenant. We'll complete things through the curses of the covenant. So that's what we're going through, is the curses of the covenant. And in the end time, he would bring them back into the covenant because he remembers his covenant forever, and he will call them by name. So with that sort of as some of the timing of it, and second Exodus is also documented not only in Ezekiel 37 after the dry bones resurrection, but also in Ezekiel 39 after the Gog War. So it's before the Gog War.
Yes, he's using a Gorilla pillow. How can you tell? Have you heard about Gorilla Ergo? It's the cutting-edge ergonomic pillow that people actually...
Now, mighty one is a term that's used in Ezekiel 39 for these ones that are slaughtered on Mount Hermon as fatlings or bulls of Bashan. Another interesting term that we need to keep in mind. But you also have mighty ones that are described in the Joel 1 and 2 war, which is the same as the Ezekiel 38 and 39 war. And Joel 3 describes the Armageddon war. So I have these two great wars. And my speculation is the Gog War is going to be the counterfeit Armageddon Antichrist will take credit for as part of his qualifications and pedigree to claim he's the Messiah before Jesus comes. So that term that we're referring to is the mighty ones. Well, that's Hebrew Gibor and Gibborim in the plural.
Yeah.
And these are the kings. These are the top two classes that are described as these mighty ones in Joel 1, 2 and Ezekiel 38 and 39. And so Gibborim is the same term that's used in Genesis 6, 4 to describe the Nephilim as the mighty ones, the men of renown. Shem or Shemaim are the two root words, one being famous or infamous or of reputation, either good or evil, and the other one, as the root, is the heavenly ones. So these are the mighty ones who are infamous of the heavenly ones. So you even get that linkage of that creation even within the terms that they're doing. And these are, again, the infamous ones as the mighty ones. These are the mighty, infamous ones that are descended or recreated in the end time of the heavenly ones. So how do we make that connection into the New Testament? Because there's two different languages. In the book of Revelation, we'll talk about kings. We'll talk about the great men, and it will talk about the great merchants. And so it's that word great that we want to really sort of talk about. So in Revelation 6:15, for example, as the kings of the earth and the great men. And in Revelation 19:18, at the time of Armageddon, you've got these kings and these great men again, right? So it's talking about a greater family of royals and nobility. So the words that are used in the translation out of Greek for this is mega and megastranes. And it goes back to the Indo-Aryan word meg, which basically means a large, vast, tall, big, and mighty individual, a giant, as it was understood by the Indo-Aryans. And mega means of great stature, of great age, of massive size, of a large height. So all of the words that are being used are describing giants or descendants of the giants, as the kings as the royals, the dynastic bloodlines of the giants, one or both, And Magus Grandies also means great men, and it produces grandies, which produces similar meanings to giant. And so it basically means lofty, as in fallen angels are talked about as lofty, or high ones, just as the royals are talked in that manner. And it means a pedigree, a genealogical pedigree from the lofty ones. And grandees is a significant term that's used within the royal nomenclature and titles and names and hierarchy. So it's embedded throughout their taciturn imagery and languages that it embeds their sort of history. So we can look at these same kings and mighty ones of these wars that are talked about in the Gog War and in the Armageddon War as being the same beings as we would look at as the great men in the end time. We also get these great men and these kings in conjunction with Babylon, right? So they're in league with them. So the language is there. We just have to make that sort of connection. And so all of that is now, from a biblical perspective, set the table for the players and the organizations. And we get all of its understanding from prehistory, including the Babylon religion, which is rooted in the Hebrew word Babel. When we look at the organizational structure of the giants, both before the flood and after the flood, they have this polytheist religion. And it's the same religion, and it's referenced as the daughters of Babylon in the Old Testament.
Yes.
That's there for a reason, so that we understand the context. And it's a mystery religion, which is an initiatory religion, and this is the mother of the harlots, or the daughters of Babylon. And all the terms that are used, whether it's harlot or terms like that, are Old Testament terms as an allegory for worshiping other gods than the God Most High. So we can make those definitions and those connections, and that this Babylon religion is going to ride the beast of empires in Revelation 12, 13, and 17, hold the reins over them. So much so that they'll partner with Antichrist at the midpoint of the last 7 years to overthrow Babylon. Plus, Babylon grows very, very wealthy. So when we talk about the beast of empires, that's the thing that rises out of the sea in Daniel 7 and in Revelation 13. And it's like a hydra. It's a multi-headed leviathan, serpentine imagery. Again, linking that serpentine imagery and bloodline to all the beast empires. And you could define that through two different ways to get to 7. One is through Daniel 7, where we have the 4 winds, the 4 archangels of prophecy whip up out of the sea the beast empires, and we get Babylon being the first one, then we have Persia, then we have Greece, and then we have what will be Rome and the Iron Empire, and then in the end time, you'll have that empire extend out of the last empire, the Roman Empire, for the 10 kings, the 10 toes, the 10 horns, same allegory for the same meaning for the end time. And these beast empires are adequately named because it's the spiritual beasts that slander God. And Antichrist is the ultimate beast. He'll be the 8th empire at the midpoint of the last 7 years, who takes that to the same level Nimrod likely did as an archetypical Antichrist figure. And so he's like a new Nimrod, as I call him in book 1. And so the beast empires are the descendants of the royal giants that were created. And what they're trying to do throughout history is create a world empire, just as they were trying to do before the flood, which brought the flood and the violence and everything that came about with that, along with the godliness, because they're imposing this universal religion. And so these beast empires, they're not permitted to do one thing. They're permitted to come about. The thing they cannot do is present their Antichrist wannabe.
In an ideal world, John wouldn't have accidentally deleted the quarterly spreadsheet this morning, then blamed Alison in an accidental all-staff email. Thank goodness for you foods. It's real food for the real world. You
They're always crappy food, that.
foods.
Come on, friend to friend. What's the house worth?
No property price estimates trusted by the banks.
If you're hungry for drama, Paramount Plus is serving up a feast. Like Tony and Ziva in the NCIS spin-off. Tony and Ziva. Stream Paramount Plus from $6.99 a month. Tastes like drama.
We love to travel. So much so, we started Bummy Tours and put our name to it to take people who love it as much as us on the type of tours with small groups, just enough guidance and freedom to explore that we want to go on ourselves, and we do. It's who you go with.
Sorry, guys, I was opening up my lolly
Yeah,
packet.
because that's ordained for the end time. So Michael, the great archangel, fights against these empires in the book of Daniel. He's fighting against Persia and Greece as a couple of those examples, right? It doesn't prevent the beast empires from coming. He prevents that beast empire to succeed in presenting an antichrist figure and bring about the ordained times before the ordained times, which is what they're trying to do. So you can imagine somebody like Nebuchadnezzar or a Nimrod or Caesar or Alexander as beast antichrist wannabes.
Right. Yeah.
And so we get to the number through the beast empires in Daniel 7 this way, of the 7 kings of empires that Revelation is talking about. You get there through Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome, and then the new Roman Empire. That gives you 5. Before that is Assyria. You could look at an empire of Syria. That's with one of the Sargon kings or kings, pick anyone you want, or you can take that all the way back to Nimrod, which establishes the Assyrian state, his descendants, according to the Bible. I think, and I'll come back to what I think in just a second, and Egypt is the other one. So one of the relationships in the first allegory is that these beast empires have an intimate relationship with Israel.
Yeah.
So in Egypt, they're born into a nation. And then they're brought into the land of the covenant at the time of the Exodus. Assyria imposes part of the curses of the covenant onto the northern kingdom and dispersed them into all of the nations and not to be seen again until the last 7 years, likely by the 144,000 we're going to go out and call them. And so you have the next empire, which is Babylon, which is going to apply the curses of the covenant onto the southern kingdom and take them in exile to Babylon, but then they come back through the permission of the Persian Medes Empire to build the temple, Cyrus beginning with. And so an intimate relationship there. You're going to have the Greek Empire succeed the Persian Medes Empire, and they're going to do 2 things. One, they're going to invade all of the land and rule over Israel, and they're going to create an abomination-like process by doing the abomination-like things in the temple as part of the rule. Just as Nebuchadnezzar did the same type of thing. They created an image for him, for people to worship. And then you have Rome, who is going to oversee the crucifixion of Jesus with the legal tender as the empire. And then they're going to exert more of the curses for a rejection of the Messiah to be dispersed in the diaspora of Jerusalem and the destruction of Jerusalem. And so we should expect a relationship with the Beast Empire, with Israel and Judah in the end time, which is the 7th empire, when Israel begins to awaken and remember who they are and starting their process back to reconciliation. And then you're going to see in the time of Jacob's trouble, the Exodus. when the Antichrist is the 8th empire. So that gives you the 7 and the 8 empires that are talked about in Revelation 17 and Revelation 13. The 8th empire is mentioned in Revelation 17. So Daniel 8 is another special one, and you get to the same number in a different allegory that adds more information. That's where you have Persia and Greece as part of these beast empires, and you take that understanding from Daniel 7. It follows immediately. Now, in Daniel 8, you have an Antichrist that's going to rise as a single horn, just as the single horn rises amongst the 10 in Daniel 7. So they're related, they're not contradictory. It's adding more information. And so you have Alexander's empire, which is 1. Then it's split into 4 parts, which is 5. After Alexander's death, Rome is part of that and succeeds. That's 6. And then you have the end time empire, that's 7, and Antichrist, that's 8. And now you can use all of that information together, that in the details, and overlay them together onto the New Testament and bring out the full meaning. So it's important to understand that these beast empires are going to be rising. These are worldwide empires. So you're going to have 10 groups of nations as these kings are emperors of these individual ones, and before the end time can come, we're going to need to see that come into play, as well as Babylon rise. So, but I just wanted to make the imagery come to life from the Old Testament into the New Testament, so that we can understand the perfection in that imagery, and that when we look at the chronology that Jesus provides in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 17, and 21, there's a specific generation that we're not taught about in the church. That's the fig tree generation, where everything that Jesus said would happen in the order of events that he set down, and we know that it's a sequence of events. It's not just haphazardly grouped or just grouped by similar types of catastrophes together, or the other different ways people try and rationalize it away, because Jesus said, and then this happens, and then this happens, and he puts the abomination in the middle, and then advises us to go learn about Daniel when that abomination event happens, and the full details of the meaning of that, so that we can understand that, and that will help us to understand the book of Revelation as well. So that word then is the Greek word toda. It means exactly that. It's the then. It's the sequence of the then. So do not let people try and reimagine what Jesus said and put all prophecy around what Jesus said, not vice versa. And then all the conflicts will disappear. And even the book of Revelation is going to fit that way. All you have to do is remember that there's 2 parts to the timing of Revelation. One is the time of John, and when he's going to get the 6 letters to the churches. Then he's going to deliver those letters to the churches. And then you have Revelation 6 for the things that have to happen. And so this is the testimony of Jesus Christ given to the angel to show John in a vision, in the spirit of vision. And so it has to fit with what Jesus provided for us as a template, because the Bible is not in conflict. So now you can put in Revelation 6 to Revelation 14 to the middle in the first half before the abomination in Jesus' chronology. Then you can put 15 to 19 in the second half of his chronology. And then you have the millennium, that's, a separate piece on the end before we go into eternity. And everything makes sense then. And I do a few other things, like when I do my research on prophecy, and anything I do in the Bible, anything I take from outside the Bible and measure against what's in the Bible. But one of the things that I think, because there's so many different ways to view prophecy, and they can't all be right.
Yeah.
And what I say is test everybody's, including what I say. But one of the things I try and do is And one of the red flags to most of the approaches, because they use preconceived approaches. So they try and fit everything into that notion. Put everything around what Jesus said, not what your preconceived notion is. That's number one. Number two is don't leave out inconvenient passages.
Yes.
That's one of the major issues with the eschatological approaches. If they don't like a passage, they ignore it, or they try and convince you it doesn't say what you read, even though it says that. They try and reimagine it, and they try and reimagine what Jesus said when he doesn't fit what their preconceived conclusion is. It's very much akin to what happened in the time of Jesus, is that the Israelites, people of Judah, the southern kingdom at that time, they missed their Messiah because they didn't want to recognize the inconvenient passages to all of the prophecies about the coming of Jesus.
Yeah.
Nothing is new under the sun. What was will be again. Just as we are part of the new covenant, we will make the same mistakes, unfortunately, as the first covenant.
Right. We need to not look through the lenses of our culture of the today, but live in their language to fully understand prehistory, the how and why Hebrew certain words were used, but also then the New Testament with the Greek, and then connect it with everything else and connect what Jesus said himself. It's amazing that we have God, Jesus, coming down into our dimension and speaking and revealing these things to us. Yes. For me, it's like sometimes we go to church and we're just sitting in church, we're just learning about Jesus. It is amazing. We're learning about Jesus, about God.
I was going to say, here's an example of how stiff-necked we are as a people. So, Jesus, when he was here, he said, I could bring somebody back from Abraham's bosom, which is a parable and an allegory, not that there's a place, but that's what a lot of the people in the society believed at that time. So use that as an example. So I could bring somebody back from the dead from Abraham's bosom, and nobody would believe it. And then he raised Lazarus from the dead, who was asleep, because he's human, right? And we sleep in heaven until our resurrection. And nobody obviously believed him. Yeah. So we have to understand this is our nature. And we had the Messiah who was here, and his own people who should have known intimately that he was coming and what to expect, rejected him because he didn't meet their preconceived conclusion.
Exactly. That is so true. And I realize, I think more than ever, Christians specifically, they don't know the Bible today, as they even did, let's say, 50 years ago. A lot of Christians don't read the whole Bible. And preaching even changed over time as well. They go to sermons that's just mostly motivational messages, but it doesn't go deep into the Word of God so that the truth can change and you live according to the truth. But Gary, I think when we look at the world now, we are closer than ever. When we look at all the chess pieces being played, we're here at the end times, and I'm getting excited because I can't wait for the second coming of Jesus. I really can't.
Yeah, and I think we're probably in the fig tree generation.
Yeah.
Now we don't know how
careful what you wish for, guys.
Long that generation is.
Long ago, after the rise of a deep darkness, before the great flood, the world was ancient, untamed, and filled with wonders long forgotten. Mankind spread to scattered tribes, forging cities like Nippur, Eridu, and many watchful outposts across the untamed earth. The sons of God reached the divine. The world bowed to their corruption. The blood of Seth and Cain shaped the fate of generations amidst the roar of the behemoth. The terror of the Leviathan. And under the oppressive shadow of the fallen Anunnaki.
Great graphics.
Humanity stood on the precipice of total corruption. In a world ravaged by darkness, one man, born a slave, rises as a warrior, driven by his search for truth and meaning. But his journey is more than survival. It reflects the cry of humanity itself and leads to an ancient prophecy. From the darkened halls of Eridu to the Temple of Light in Nippur, Odanko walks a path of survival, of bonds broken and kept, pursued by beasts, shaped by love, scorched by loss, and caught in a war behind all wars. The war between the sons of light and the lords of shadow. One brought forth from the blood of the dragon, the other born from the light. The war between them has already begun.
Diane, I think Trump's going to do that to all the nations, all the states that have got bad crime. I think he's going to do that to them all.
Lightborn, Dawn of Darkness, a new novel from Ruach Entertainment. Get the first chapters free at ruachentertainment.com.
I'm getting excited because I can't wait for the second coming of Jesus. I really can't.
Yeah, and I think we're probably in the fig tree generation.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know how long that generation is. We could use examples out of the Bible. So the generation is described as 40 years in the time of the Exodus and the time in the wilderness. The book of Psalms says 70 years. And then there's 120 years that life was limited to in Genesis 6:3.
Yeah.
For sentient beings. And so physical sentient beings. And so we don't know which one is in play. So we want to be careful, but we're also told to watch and that we can recognize the times. Maybe not the exact hour of Jesus' first coming, of the days of Son of Man, or as Hosea 9:7 talks about the visitations of Jehovah.
Yeah.
Jehovah is Jehovah of the Elohim, which is the term that we use in the New Testament as the word logos of the God Theos. So same term, same cognate application, and we get introduced to Jehovah of the Elohim in 2:4, even though he's there in Genesis 1 as Amar when God speaks. And we also have the Ruach of the Elohim, the Spirit of God in Genesis 2, hovering over the chaos. And Psalm 104 talks about when God sends his spirit, the earth is renewed. So all three are there. Elohim is the superlative singular understanding of El Elyon there. So all three are there in the creation process. Everything's in perfection. And so you just have to let it read. Right. And so when we look at how things need to connect into the Old Testament, we have to understand it from that understanding that this is a long-term plan that is being played out through free choice. And so this generation is a generation that all of these events that Jesus talked about are going to happen. Heaven and earth will pass away, but his words will never pass away. So sometime with 120 to 40 is a generation where we should do it. I would say 70 or 120 is more likely. And that connects to the fig tree generation that most Christians have never heard of, which is one of the three overarching signs to the sequence of events. And the three overarching signs are the fig tree generation, the days of Noah, and the sorrow. And you have to understand that to understand. But we get fig tree understanding from Jesus and the tribes of Israel. And how we get there is that in prophetic allegory in the Old Testament, the vine is the northern kingdom of Israel. That was lost. And the fig tree is the southern kingdom.
Yeah.
So now when Jesus, just before he goes into the temple and is going to do a prophecy about the temple's destruction and the city's destruction, and then after that, the disciples want to know, okay, tell us about the signs of the end time and when you're coming. Gives us this, my speculation here, but because I think they're thinking, oh, this is pretty serious stuff. We better get some more information on it. But that's just me thinking, like, how does this all process? And so before he goes into the temple, he goes to a fig tree. And then he kills the fig tree.
Yeah.
And he says, because the disciples are asking, well, why are you doing this? And he's saying, this fig tree no longer bears fruit because they're about to reject their Messiah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so now when you roll forward to see, when you see that fig tree in bloom again, and obviously after the diaspora will happen to Israel and the city is destroyed, but now when you see that tree replanted there, this is the fig tree generation. So what date would we use that? If, as I speculate, that I think we are in the fig tree generation, we could use 1947 as the declaration, or 1947 as the declaration. 1948 was the War of Independence, as one of those years, as the start of the fig tree generation. But because Jerusalem is the epicenter of end time prophecy, and that they have to control Jerusalem, I would look at 1967 as a more likely start date to the fig tree generation. So if we use 70 or 120 years, then we could be on the edge of the last 7 years starting, or it could still be a ways away. So we want to be careful of it if it's 120 years. And there are still significant hurdles to overcome. So we still need that world government. We still need the universal religion, Babylon. We need the false prophets to come to bring about Babylon. And the universal religion needs to be in place so that Daniel 9:27, when Antichrist is part of the negotiating process to create this covenant of death,
Oh, you need this
that
one.
the people living in the land of the covenant at that
So I'm
time
helping you break
will
out.
be permitted to begin their sacrifices again on a wing or an
So on your head
overspread
you
or an
get caught.
extremity of the temple, which cannot happen while Islam is still
Learn not to
separate
do that.
from the universal religion. So Islam won't
Open it.
be
You always leave it
destroyed
open, Mum.
to
Thank
the
you.
universal religion, just as I think Christianity, for the most part, gets wrapped into the universal religion through Babylon, which is what Jesus is talking about in the first 3.5 years with the events that are going on in the affliction or the tribulation of the saints of that time. And so lots of things yet to happen.
Yes, yeah. And you can see some of those things happening already, even with the Catholic Church. They just want to include all other religions already and being more open to be okay with everything. Well,
Just as I could add on to that, they are wanting to position themselves and are on record as wanting to be the spiritual center for the New World Order.
Yeah.
So they're already understood that Catholicism is universal religion. They're already in Rome.
Yes.
And I'm not convinced that they're, by definition, the Babylon religion, but they're going to be a significant part about bringing it about, at least from a Christian perspective. And they're probably going to be a branch religion because, again, Vaticanus Hill is a branch from the Sibylline prophecy Palatine Hill. And that Babylon will rest on the 7 hills or the 7 mountains.
Right. So interesting. And then, of course, the temple needs to come with the Antichrist sitting on the temple, claiming to be God. And, of course, that will be the shock for a lot of Jews, because then they will realize when he really reveals himself, oh, this is not the Messiah. Jesus Christ is the Messiah. So it will start to change everything. Of course, the rebellion. But then There's something interesting I want to close, if we can, because Jesus is going to come, right, at the end, but
Even tough tummies can be sensitive. Milk that's naturally free from A1 protein. Only A2 will do.
I like milk.
Work smarter, not harder. Husqvarna Automower. The smart way to mow. Show them you can be your own man again.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
A surfer. I want to live right near the water and roll straight into the waves.
Like a seal? Hope you've a good super fun.
I do.
With an in-house advice team? Yep.
but there's going to be this millennium kingdom, and then after that, the devil's going to be released, but he's going to gather the whole world again in rebellion. And so I think a lot of people also wonder, how is that possible after Jesus' perfect reign on earth? How could that be? Maybe you can share some light on
Great
that.
point, yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's an important detail, because we have that gap
How's he going to answer it? This will be good.
before we move on into eternity, right?
Right.
And so it's there for, a very, very important reason. The first reason is that it's going to be, so there's going to be survivors from Armageddon, because Jesus steps in lest all flesh would be destroyed. And there's going to be not only those who are in second Exodus that will move in there, but there'll be Gentile nations, because you're going to have Gog and Magog as references as kind of like, I think, representing Gentile nations in Revelation 20 for that war. So you're going to have a reign of 1,000 years by the word of God. And all those ones resurrected who refused to take the mark of the beast and refused to worship Satan, refused to worship Antichrist, we're going to rule with Jesus from Jerusalem. Israel will be restored to the covenant land, and all the nations will be marked by the 70 sons of Israel.
Whew, I'm getting goosebumps.
And people are going to do pilgrimages to Jerusalem and to the worship, because that's the center of the world. That's in God's land that He gifted to Israel, that the giants illegally squatted in.
Yeah.
Knowingly, and waited for the nation of hope to come along to wipe them from the face of the earth, because they're there to do bidding.
You stepped on it again. The worst remote control dog I've ever seen.
The bidding of the fallen angels. And
Right.
so the context is very, very important. In the time of the conquest, Israel was fighting giants and hybrid giants. And that's why Book 2 goes through all of that in ways that no other book has done before.
Yeah.
And so when we sort of look at all of that in terms of the millennium, we have this 1,000-year reign in direct contrast to the previous 6,000 years going, or 7,000 years, 6,000 years going back to Adam, right? Complete opposite, poles apart. And yet there's a rebellion at the end when Satan is released, and it doesn't take them very long, a short time. And we do understand the words of that, micros chronos, as it's in the Greek, and we get that exact same term in Revelation 6 for the resurrection of the first part of the first fruits, who are being told to wait for a little while longer, a little season, for the saints to be martyred as they were for the testimony of Jesus in the tribulation of the saints, the affliction of the saints. Philipses in Matthew 24 and in Revelation 7. So it should be translated as tribulation in Matthew 24:8. And it's different than the great tribulation of the last 3.5 years in Matthew 24:21. And also note that Mark 13:19, the parallel passage, doesn't say tribulation there, it says affliction. Same description of the great affliction, and it's not seen since the beginning of time. And that's the Greek word for Philipses as well. It's translated inconsistently. Let's put it that way to be generous. And so they're told to wait for 3.5 years by implication from the start of the 144,000 to Revelation 14:1, where you see the first fruits of the 144,000 in heaven. And by that time, the two witnesses, also part of the first fruits, who have their commission for 3.5 years, have been martyred as well. So you see perfect harmony in the descriptions and the time frames. And so the longest we could move that to would be 3.5 years. Now, there's approaches out there that say we're in the time of the little season now, and it's for hundreds of years or thousands of years. And but it doesn't say that. And Revelations uses the word "and," which is "kai" in Greek, which is the same cognate thing in terms of understanding sequence of events as cognate to "tota" for then in Jesus's chronology. So, and when you have there's passages where you have a season that's used and it's longer than that the proponents would try and reinvent micros, as in microscopic. That's where the word comes from, micro out of Greek, small.
Yeah.
It's going to be translated as long season from a different Greek word, but chronos being for the season. So again, you have to reimagine and reinvent what Scripture says to get to your conclusion. That's a red flag. And so this is a very short period of time. I would say probably even less than a year, because you get similar language in the armies being gathered in Revelation 16 to gather for war for Armageddon. And that would take, less than a year. So this is probably, maybe longer than 3 months, maybe shorter than 3 months, but not a long period of time.
Yeah.
And so the point of it is that when Satan is released at the end of the 1,000 years, because he's put into the pit prison at the time of Armageddon,
right?
And at the time when the false prophet and the Antichrist are sent to the lake of fire, at the time the rest of the angels are sent to the lake of fire, all the demons are sent to the lake of fire as their punishment. Those who took the mark go to the lake of fire for eternal punishment. After that 1,000 years is up, Satan is released, and instantly there's this rebellion. That's to underline with us. This is a necessary thing because God crosses all the T's, dots all the I's, all the possibilities. He's the Alpha Omega, and he knows this is going to happen from before he creates angels and or humans. And so,
but that's free will.
Yes, he has to let things happen through free will, and it's a humbling of humans to show that even though we were raised higher than angels because we had to earn immortality through faith, and angels were created immortal with intimate knowledge.
Okay, that's a good point. Wow, that was a really good point.
And so,
but
this is
free will.
Yes, he has to let things happen through free will, and it's a humbling of humans to show that even though we were raised higher than angels because we had to earn immortality through faith, and angels were created immortal with intimate knowledge.
That's true. We would. I agree. I think you'd be right there.
Where we had very little knowledge, we're no better than angels because when we received that intimate knowledge, many of us still rebelled.
Right. Yeah.
And if people don't think there's a lot of angels that rebelled, I would say rethink that. Because in the New Testament, we're told that the stars or the angels are uncountable, just as in the Old Testament with the analogy of the host of heaven, an army of angels, and they're represented allegorically as stars in the Old and New Testament.
Right.
So there's so many there, we can't count them.
Yeah.
In two passages, we get a number of angels that are loyal, that surround the throne. And it may be an allegorical number, but on all four sides of the throne, there's 10,000 times 10,000. Daniel 8 and Revelation. And so that would be 100 million. Revelation 12 tells us a third of angels will have rebelled by the midpoint. Did they all rebel at the beginning, or there's been leaking all the way through? We don't know. But either way, if we do the calculation on this number, you could get 33 million or 50 million, depending on how you want to come up with a third there. And that's a lot of fallen angels, and not all of them were sent to the pit prison. And they've been ruling because army has rank and order, and they've moved up when the parent gods were first sent to the pit prison, and then after the flood were like the offspring gods like the Baalim, who committed the same crimes as before the flood, were also sent there. So there's a lot of fallen angels that are now going to become more ever present because they know their time is short, just as all the spurious will be. Then just before the midpoint of the last 7 years, the worst of them will come out of the pit prison. Then there's the war in heaven, just as Antichrist will go into heaven along with that, because he comes to power in Revelation 12 with 3.5 years left by the number there, and the 3.5 year reign numbered in Revelation 13, and the descriptions of Antichrist coming to power at the abomination in the book of Daniel. So 3.5 years, New and Old Testament, and he's going to throw some of the starry host down onto the ground, trample on. So he's going to do what Nimrod was maybe intending on doing, but
never got around to it. Yeah.
Right.
And so we have this war that's going to happen in the end time. That's as a result of everything that's happened throughout history. And then we have a repeat rebellion, amazingly, at the end of the millennium, and that's there so that we can move on, and all who move forward are loyal to God.
And those who truly chose him from their own free will.
Yes.
And then it's done. I can't wait. I want to remind everyone that when you look at the world and everything, our fight is not against each other, but against the spiritual forces in the air.
He sounds South African.
And I think, Gary, I would like to talk to you again, just to go a little bit back as well, to talk about those fallen angels and what they really look like. We do get some descriptions here and there in the Bible as well, and even those that's in the pit that will be released, the way that John explains that they look like this, like that. So we do get those descriptions, but also to describe what the Nephilim look like, and maybe the Rephaim afterward as well. What do you say?
Sure, absolutely.
All right.
Really fun. Yeah.
All right, guys, get these books, because here he explains everything in detail that we talked about with Bible verses, and so you can go and make it a Bible study as well. Gary, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. I will invite you again. And guys, before you go, remember to subscribe, those of you who are new here, so you won't miss that new video with Gary as well. And then...
Okay, that was interesting. Well,
we're going to talk about how prehistory...
okay, I thought I had some God lined up, but I didn't, so bear with me a sec, guys.
Just go over. The link is in the description, and you guys can go over there and subscribe to my new channel where I'm going to be interviewing so many different kinds of guests. So make sure you check it out. Eventually, it will only be over there and not over here. So make sure, if you enjoy these at all, go check it out. Thank you guys so much for your support.
The world keeps lying, but he won't retreat on his quest for truth. Yeah. Truth! Yeah, what's the truth? They can't stop me, they can't block me. Moving through, got that fire, they can't stop me. Quest for truth, breaking chains, making waves. That's what I do. When they hate, I create.
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for coming over here to Pounder's Quest. And this channel is basically me interviewing people. I'll probably do other videos here and there, whatever I decide to commentate on. But this...
I can watch, actually, you could actually watch that.
of predictions that seemingly are related to what happened to Charlie. We're going to get into, in this video, we're going to get into a ton of stuff. We're going to get into some of these Hollywood actors saying the most just repugnant things after what happened. We got Stephen King. We got another guy who was in Star Trek, George Takei. We have also Chris Pratt. Apparently, they're coming after Chris Pratt over the most ridiculous thing. We'll get into that as well.
He's Christian. That's why they're going after him.
That seem to be tied to Charlie Kirk. And you'll probably, I think you'll all agree when you see these because it's very, very strangely connected perfectly when you see what they say. We're going to get into that in this video. We also have apparently a lot of people leaving the left. We might get into some of those clips. We have a clip from Andrew Tate and much more. We even have some nurse, and this is a shocking video. I'm going to get into this nurse one. We got one on Sam Altman. We got so much stuff. Let's just get into the main stuff here. We're talking about many will fall in the fall. We talked about before this man who predicted, there's two men who predicted our current president. One was Mark Taylor. The other was Kim Clement. They all predicted him way before he ever ran. While he was still in Hollywood doing, his show, his TV show, his business TV show. And this was way before he'd ever run. One of them even said Kennedy would join him way beforehand. This guy was the first one, I think, that was well known for predicting him. His name's Mark Taylor. He has an interesting prediction from a year ago that seems to be 100% directly talking about Charlie Kirk. Check this out.
The discernment to know, maybe I'll put it up there, guys. This is something I shared on social media over a year ago. It was July 5th in 2024, and I put out, as I was waking up this morning, I saw the words, "One will be killed, and the blood pressure of America shall rise. Pray for America, for we are about to enter into some very perilous times."
And he goes on to say more than that. He even says that it will end up turning into a very big movement that will cause things to happen. Now, what's interesting about that is Kim Clement predicted that many will fall in the fall, but he also had a very interesting statement about September that seems to be talking about Charlie Kirk also. So we have this first statement. Well, let me play this again, and then we'll get into what Kim said, and we'll tie this all together.
Let
me go ahead and share this with everyone.
Yep.
And yourself.
So this is a prophetic word I gave on social media. It's not on my website. People are asking for it on my website. I don't have it on my website. Maybe I'll put it up there, guys. This is something I shared on social media over a year ago. It was July 5th in 2024, and I put out, as I was waking up this morning, I saw the words, "One will be killed, and the blood pressure of America shall rise. Pray for."
Now, what's interesting is he had that prediction given to him on July 5th, one day after July 4th. And Charlie Kirk died one day before September, of course, 11th. Both are two very important days in history, one day apart on the prediction, one day apart on the event that occurred that was being predicted. Something I just realized that literally when I was just watching this. But it says that the blood pressure, one will be killed, the blood pressure of America will rise. You can clearly see that's what's going on. And he goes on to say that it will turn into.
And guys, remember Mike from around the world? He said about, hang on.
To a force or a movement. I don't remember the exact words. I don't know if he goes in and says the rest.
Yeah, Mike from around the world told us the same thing, basically.
Just like ... here. He doesn't show the whole thing.
For America, for we are about to enter.
He doesn't. I don't think he shows it. Maybe he says it. I don't want to play a bunch of his video to find it. But I remember I read the rest of it, and it said something like that. It will turn into like a movement or momentum or something. And interestingly, something like this will bring forth a sort of a righteous indignation that could lead to something like many falling in the fall. Because the fall is not here yet. It's almost here. Many will fall in the fall, which is what Kim Clement said. And Kim Clement, let me play this clip here, and then I'll show you what he wrote that I think is tied. Actually, let me show you what he wrote first, because I think this is directly tied in. A very strange thing shall happen in September, moving into the fall, where there shall be a great fall. Kim Clement predicted fall of the enemies, fall of kings, fall of princes. I shall do a strange thing in Egypt again. Again, look at America. What's on the back of our dollar bill? We got something from Egypt there, the Great Pyramid, right? Many will fall in the fall. A lot of people, I've went through and shown how I believe that's referring to this year. I've shown how something in April was predicted by Kim Clement, referring to Pope Francis. Then it looks like September, a very strange thing to happen. Now, that's pretty vague. It may not be, you may think, okay, that doesn't really seem to refer to him, but as I've established in previous videos, many will fall in the fall. I believe it is this year because of the things that have shown markers that it's this year. And if that is this year, and this is referring to the same time frame, it's referring to this September, which we're in right now. So a strange thing will happen in September. This, I would say, is a very strange thing that happened in September. That's my sort of argument on that. That was from October 30th, 2014. He said that. This is from a completely different date. This is June 14th, 2014. So he said this many times. Many shall fall in the fall. He said this numerous times.
That is coming. I stand to protect spring, but fall, you are rebelling. Or is it that possibly the Spirit of God will cause many to fall in fall?
So he said that numerous times. So this was an important key prediction of his. Just like when he predicted our current president and said he would have 2 terms, we even had Henry Groover say that he would have a pause between the terms. And I've covered that in the past on video, where he had a dream of our president coming to his house, laying down his kingly mantle and his robe, and says, "I'll come back for it later." So, of course, Henry Groover is no longer with us either. He's the guy that predicted that Russia and China would come, of course, against America eventually. Back in the 80s, he had a dream about this, and I believe that is in our future. I don't know when, but not too distant, probably. We have here a very strange thing will happen in September, moving into the fall. And like I said, we're going to get into all this and much more. First of all, I got to mention, we have only a few hours left on the giveaway. Go check it out. Link it. There might be 2 hours when you watch this. Maybe 1 hour, maybe 3 hours. I don't know. Link is in the description for this, my friends. $500 Amazon gift cards, a $500 laptop, 6 different winners, easily a 1 in 100 chance of winning. Very easy to enter. Pause the video. First link in the description. You literally put your name and email in one time, click a bunch of buttons, you get numerous entries. Numerous entries. The more entries you do, the better chances of winning you have, because usually people only do about half of it. Link is in the description. Of course, this book here, The Lost Ways, how your great-grandfather lived without electricity, but about a seller, do things around the house as they did in all the ways, hundreds of pages illustrated. You're going to need that book before something happens in the fall, potentially in the fall. We're not even in the fall yet. But something strange did happen in September. Made America's blood pressure rise. Charlie Kirk fell.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned Trump before.
And that will lead to them falling. My friends, I really hope that is the case. That is what I'm thinking is going to happen.
Yeah.
Links are in the description for all that. Let's get back to the video. So we have, of course, even Democrats now leaving the party.
Being intentionally being a Democrat. I was slowly moving away from it anyway because I was noticing certain things, but I know I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican either, but I'm not a Democrat. And I just noticed like certain things, like the way that the conversation would be shut down by calling somebody a name or calling somebody a bigot. It's like, okay, and why am I a bigot just because I disagree with you? Like I can disagree with you and still not want anything to work bad for you. I just disagree. It's like, oh, you're personally committing violence against me if you, disagree. It's like, that's a cop-out. And I would know.
That is so ridiculous, but that's how they keep you in check. You got to agree with them and go with the flow, go with the crowd, not have a diverging opinion whatsoever.
Come up, jump.
And
jump.
Honestly, people should just realize. People should realize
Oh,
that
man,
this is wrong.
you should jump.
This is flat out wrong. This guy, I think this guy has a good
Man, I'm
message.
65 years old. Man, no way.
I'll never see their daddy again. A wife that's got to grieve her husband. Parents that have to bury their son. Every one of y'all in the comment section just sound like inhuman pieces of shit. And honestly, here's the thing. This is why I don't fault the Democratic Party. Because some of them have human decency. Some of them can speak out and say, hey, we don't agree with this. Hey, no matter what we believe, that's not fair for this to happen. Prayers for his family. Because it is not fair to blanket you being a shitty, I use human very loosely.
So, of course, he's saying it seems like there's a large percentage. I don't know what the percentage is. Social media can throw it off. Maybe most people are not like this. I'm guessing most liberals or Democrats are not rejoicing and laughing and enjoying the fact.
She listens because she left.
Fact that he's gone, but are actually civil people, good people. You know what I mean? I'm sure most of them probably are that way, but it is really strange and maybe disturbing that it seems like a large percentage, way too big of a percentage, are enjoying this, think it's funny. That is disgusting, and it should not be tolerated. And this is what's making people's blood boil.
I watched a bit of YouTube this morning, and people who got on the net and bragged about Charlie Kirk getting what happened to him, well, they got fired. A lot of them have been fired for doing that. Just so they're having spin outs and they're crying their eyes out at it. You got to look it up, guys.
Is how his memory is being tarnished by people just so self-centered. You know what I mean? So self-centered. Only they don't even care about the fact that he had a family or a wife or children. And some are actually wondering if this is going to be a trend. And really, I hope that's not the case. We had Andrew Tate yesterday talking about this. And I'll just play a little bit of this. And we're going to get into some other stuff I didn't get into my other video. I have some really interesting stuff to get into that I didn't cover over my other channel. So let's just play this one first, and then I'll get into the other stuff.
Andrew, how are you? Or economic policy. This is a complete
I've seen this too. I looked at a few this morning.
different world.
And judging from what I've seen how the Democrats are behaving, guys, you're in civil war already. What could they do that they're not doing already? They're assassinating people from the right. So it's really bad.
They're coming for the rest of us. We no longer live in any kind of civilized political discourse. The left and the right are not arguing about interest rates or economic policy. This is a complete different worldview. These people lack spirits and souls, and they believe that anybody who disagrees with them or says a word counter to their narrative deserves a bullet in the neck.
So this is not, of course, everyone, though.
See, that's mentioned in the less version.
And, of course, he's being a little bit hyper.
Should get it in the neck. Oh, that's pretty heavy.
Hyperbolic, I believe. The fact is, though, there are some elements here that seem to have such a different paradigm that they don't even respect human life. And they think it's okay to do stuff like this. And we have seen a pattern. We saw the Catholic Church. We saw what happened with Charlie and others. Actually, there's been multiple at this point. They all seem to be from the same realm, the same group of thinking. We're talking, of course,
some cities and towns in Africa, they're wiping out half the town. They're actually wiping out the Christians, and the other side's doing it.
Antifa, in this case, but they all seem to be of that ilk or that realm. And, you know, that doesn't mean every certain person that's in that group is that way. Of course not. But it is very strange how it seems to be getting worse. And I think Andrew Tate is right that in some respects,
Well, we're fighting the left now as well, aren't we? We're fully on fighting the left.
I think he's onto it, but I think he's been a little bit overboard with it. But again, it's better to be cautious than not cautious, right? So, what is it? Pray for the best, prepare for the worst kind of attitude. Maybe is the right approach with this. Might be wise to beef up security for some of these guys. 100%. 100%. So you got that going on. You have a number of Hollywood people, and this is what I'm talking about. Is it just because they're big names and they like to say crazy stuff? Or is it this is really the mindset of too many people? Right? You have George Takei from the original Star Trek. I used to watch the original Star Trek. So it's really disappointing to see people like him say things like this. I hope Charlie recovers quickly. Then, like James Brady, uses his megaphone to help advocate for common sense limits on fire of force arms. Completely callous comments. Completely jaded. I mean, it's really disgusting when they say things like this, not even thinking about who it might hurt. We had Stephen King apparently saying multiple things. He said something in that realm like George did there, but he said actually about 3 different things that got him in trouble. No surprise. Stephen King's well known for getting himself in trouble saying stuff. But this one apparently is the one that got him the most trouble. Millions of Americans are requesting for...
I talk to the TV guys. Sometimes when I'm watching something, I'll reply as though I'm in on the conversation.
Charlie's estates to sue Hollywood author Stephen King over his defamatory statement. Here, Stephen King's saying in response regarding Charlie, he advocated for stoning, of course, gays, to death. Just saying. No, he didn't. He never advocated for that. I just saw a clip of a gay conservative student asking him a question about being part of TPUSA. And Charlie's like, yeah, I mean, we're open. We have open arms. You agree with us on all these different issues? You're welcome to our group. You can be gay if you want. You can be part of our group. He never said anything like this. So, of course, now apparently Stephen King realized how bad he stepped in it and has apologized for saying this. And then he gave up some weird reason why he said it, which makes no sense. What he actually demonstrated was how some people cherry pick passages. I don't know what is he trying to say that he was cherry picking a passage to, I don't know what he's trying to say there. It's ridiculous what he's saying. John Rich here, though, said in response, Charlie would have prayed for you to give your life to Jesus, even with the vile things you've said about him. 100% I agree with that. That is, I believe, what Charlie would do. That's what real Christians do. Stephen, open the Bible. Start reading right now. Start with the story of Stephen, your namesake, in Acts 7:59. That's interesting. Because Stephen, in Acts, was, of course, stoned. And
okay, Phil, I'm going to ask you a question. I didn't get an answer before. How come Paul had the authority to persecute Stephen and stone him to death, but no one had that authority for Jesus? They needed to go to the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees, and they had to go to the Roman councillors to get it to happen. So how come they could just kill him without the warrant, but they couldn't kill, you know what I'm saying?
Was for simply telling the truth, and the people couldn't handle it.
Like he didn't have law on side to kill kill Stephen.
Simply telling the truth. Telling the truth of some historical events in history, just running through some historical events, saying, this is what happened, this is what happened. He's talking to...
Yeah, Shawnee, I don't care what anyone says. Trump's the funniest politician I've ever met. If I was against him, like I'm more Trump than the other dudes, but if I was against him, gee, I'd be angry at him because he gets them everywhere. He's like, oh man, he gives them heaps.
To a bunch of people, and he's just straight up spitting facts. Stephen was. And they got so cut to the heart, they went crazy.
YouTube's covered in them Charlie Clerk videos. So that'll hopefully that'll run out soon.
And took him out. That's what happened to Stephen. Very similar, actually, in respect to Charlie, in some respects. Similar kind of story, actually. So, of course, at any rate, so there you see what Stephen King did there. Absolutely disgusting.
He gets caught and throws off.
Sealer Korean fish bites are super saucy, crunchy, and so easy to cook. Get your new Sealer Korean fish bites today.
Right now, Energy Australia are offering a little help. You can get 18% less than the electricity reference price. Switch to Energy Australia today.
It's all too easy to make a mess, but it's just as easy to clean it up with Easy Off Ban. Our bathroom cleaner removes up to 100% of soap scum. Ban! And the dirt is gone.
Bev, you're sitting on a monster. Big, isn't it?
Awaken your super.
Wherever we go.
But we did have Chris Pratt say something good, which you would expect. He's a Christian
I've never watched any of them Avatar movies. They're not up my alley.
himself, praying for Charlie Kirk right now, for his wife and children, for our country. We need God's grace. God help us. And apparently people are trying to cancel him over saying that. Some libs appear.
I was just about to say, these guys should get in the town squares and preach for Christ. If they done that, that'd be so cool.
Or whoever were trying to get him canceled from Marvel for simply saying what I read to you. It's the most insane stuff. Anyway, you get the idea. So we have that. Of course, now they've apparently caught the man who did it. His name is Tyler. If you didn't know already, I'm sure a lot of you already know. He clearly was in that type of realm. I already mentioned. He was in Antifa.
Bingo.
And, of course, I don't believe that he was alone and did it himself only.
Soros was behind Antifa, and I've seen I've seen Trump's Pam Bondi, is that her name? She's going after him for doing that.
Because we had all these publications coming out a day beforehand reporting it. New York Times, LA Times, timestamp September 9th. About the story.
Okay, guys. He's got to be his ritual, a sacrifice, surely.
A day before it happened, you had a book published a day before it happened. How did they know a day beforehand? I don't think he was alone. You had, of course, yeah, exactly. The one who went after our president, and also Charlie Kirk.
I'm sick of
both of
picking
the
you up.
people that went after. Both of them had zero digital footprint. They had no social media presence. Does that even make any sense?
Stay up here.
This
You
guy
hop up.
Tyler had no
You hop
social
down and
media
get up yourself.
footprint either, apparently. And he's just did it alone. A lone person. I don't believe it at all. I think there was more. I think that this was coordinated. This is my theory on it. Of course, now they're.
The way it looks like, to be honest, it looks like he's been set up by the right.
Doing lockdowns on various campuses. Not a result of this, because they got calls. People saying they're going to do more stuff. We had this nurse, and how disgusted she was about some of her fellow nurses rejoicing that Charlie's gone. I was just on like a Reddit or something. I wasn't even Reddit. It was just some random forums. I was like going on Google and doing searches about hospitals. It had nothing to do with these topics. It was just some random thing I was looking up. I can't remember what it was about. And I kept seeing comments like, yeah, our nurses were laughing at us. I saw a bunch of weird comments like this. I'm like, what? Like you go into a hospital, you're sick, you have something wrong with you, and they're laughing at you. They're making fun of you.
Wow.
I covered a story like a couple days ago of some people in a hospital mocking, showing like stains from patients and making jokes and posting it on social media. Now, apparently, we have nurses laughing, thinking it's funny, mocking that Charlie's gone. What the hell?
As a medical professional, I treat everyone, every life, with the most respect, regardless of your beliefs, regardless of your background. You are a human life first, and that is how I treat.
Yeah, that's that as a yeah. You got to do that.
All of my patients, and that is how we should treat everyone. So
I must admit, if I was a doctor, I'm a little bit shallow here because I would judge them by their religion.
fact that medical professionals that are making medical decisions for people are mocking and making fun of the death of an innocent man, a father, a husband, just because
Disgusting.
you don't agree with their political beliefs is appalling. It is an outrage.
So what's happened to our country, man? I even had a dream last night about this. I had this dream. It wasn't about this specifically, but it was very, very strange. And essentially, it was showing the worst side of humanity. I was seeing the absolute worst side of humanity. I can't even say all the stuff I saw in the dream. I'll do it on my website because it was so ridiculous. There was one scene in the dream. It was like the third scene. I can tell you that part. Okay, I'm walking down the hall. I'm looking for a restroom, and I go to a room, and it's not a restroom, but I turn the light on. I'm like, oh, that's not a restroom. But the light's like very slowly turning on. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I walk past that hall, that room, and I keep walking. I'm like, oh, let me go look in that room. So I go back, and I look in that room, and the light finally came on after 10 seconds or something. I go in there, and there's this old lady. She's sitting on a couch, like a small sofa couch, actually a lot like this one right here, not the same, but same size about. And there's like this table in front of her, and she's just like talking to herself. The table's right here, and she's just talking to herself. Oh, she's talking, and she was doing it in the dark. I'm like, what the hell? Like someone just stuffed her in this room and just shut off the light. Like that's messed up. She's extremely old. She's like 90 or I don't know how old she is. And I saw her talking to herself, and then I'm like, hey, hi, how you doing? I'm like, I started trying to talk to her, and then she looked up at me, and then like one side of her face, like you could tell something was growing on her face. I don't know what was going on, but her skin was covering all her eye, and then this eye was partially covering, but you could still see a little bit. And she's like, oh, hey, hi, how are you doing? And started talking to me. I'm like, who the hell would throw an old woman in a room with the lights off and just leave her there like that? And it's just like, that's so nuts. But that was actually one of the examples in my dream. But there was actually three. The other two were even more crazy. But it just showed me how society is completely selfish, completely backwards, and up is down, left is right kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's kind of what's happened. I think that's what God was trying to say through the dream to me, is that our society is very, very jaded and just selfish and completely lost its connection with reality at this point. How to love someone, how to treat someone with respect, all that kind of stuff. And this is what's causing the blood to boil in America. Now people are standing up. You have this guy who never makes anything on social media. And he says that he's just a guy usually scared to say things because he worries about people, what they'll think of him, worried about missing out on opportunities because of an online footprint. The average Joe has got a job, doesn't want to get fired from it. Yesterday, a man died, presumably because he believed in the same things I believe in. I'm a conservative, more importantly, I'm a Christian. So he makes this video and puts it on social media saying, hey, look, I'm going to make my voice known.
My name is Jim. I have practically no online presence.
Okay, he looks pretty boring. Hang on, looking up someone. Hang on, Moo. Where is it? Hang on, guys, just looking for something. Where is he? Where is he? He was pretty good. Hang on, JD up here. Sorry guys, bear with me. Oh man.
Navy plans to invest $377 million. Just days ago, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek signed an executive order focused on the Cascadia subduction zone.
Oregon Governor Tina Kotek has signed a new executive order.
Now confirmed reports show that the U.S. Navy is hardening its Puget Sound shipyard to prepare for a major earthquake, and it's right next to the Cascadia subduction zone. StarsandStripes.com, Puget Naval Sound Shipyard starts a new phase of earthquake resilience overhaul. The Navy plans to invest $377 million to strengthen the dry dock and enhance its survivability in the event of a major earthquake. The shipyard is located about 100 miles east of the offshore Cascadia subduction zone. But at the same time, new scientific expeditions are mapping cracks in ships on the seafloor off the west coast and providing evidence that the Cascadia subduction zone ruptures are breaking apart as we speak.
We knew this. We knew this because you
Why are
died.
state leaders in the Navy preparing now? And what does this new seafloor rupture evidence mean for millions on the West Coast? Just yesterday, an eyewitness off Coos Bay sent in footage of unusual ocean movements following the 5.0 quake that hit the Cascadia subduction zone.
Yeah.
And they're constantly monitoring this as the USGS.
Yeah, completely short stage, yeah.
Said from now to September 17th, we're going to see another 5.0 quake hit. And today we've seen a 3.0 quake off the coast of Ferndale, California, in the Cascadia subduction zone. Everybody needs to keep watching so I continue to get eyewitness videos, but at the same time, new mapping expeditions on the seafloor are capturing evidence of cracks, ruptures along the Cascadia subduction zone. This isn't theory. This is what they're seeing deep under the ocean of the West Coast right now.
Vessel that'll give us, a better toolkit to be able to support operations and will allow us to map, monitor, and explore the ocean and seafloor.
Traditional mops and buckets are filthy. These hang on to nasty grime and dirt, clinging to germs and spreading.
So the team of senior scientists and senior research specialists and a senior research technician all went out to Cascadia subduction zone with USGS to better understand the earthquake deformation and turbidity flows that generate along Cascadia subduction zone that moves along Canada to California. What they're going to do now is going to help them determine when future earthquakes will happen on the seafloor, mapping it with AUV, because now the turbidite deposits have been left there, and these are where the ruptures occur in larger earthquakes.
Picking you up every 5 minutes. Knock it off.
But now they use
Literally every
AUV
5
and
minutes.
ROV that are designed to get
You're
into
not
the
playing
depths,
your mum.
so they can find out what these fault ruptures can be mapped out and sampled in detail. And what they found It's very concerning. The Cascadia subduction zone of a rupture was breaking apart. But what does this mean for you on the West Coast? Well, they're looking at this for landslide events or slipping events that occur where the plates are locked. And that means no tsunami happens if it's locked. You can see right under 1D Fuga plate on Cascadia subduction zone. But once they unlock, then you have a period where the megathrust comes out of the ocean. And that's the area where the tsunami basically formulates underneath the plates because all of the pressure that's built up. And in this study of the expedition on the seafloor, did they come out and tell us when anything is going to happen? No, because they're still monitoring and constantly looking at the situation. Now I'm going to show you the zones where these areas where the megathrust can happen along this entire West Coast area. So I'm about to tell you all the risks. First, let's look at the Border Formation Zone. This is right between.
Yeah, she annoys me for crying, but after a while, it doesn't matter, Di. We treat her, she's very well treated. That's a little girl.
This rupture is concerning because it goes to the Mendocino Triple Junction that goes across San Andreas Fault. This is yet another fracture zone that's on the Cascadia subduction. This is where one of the ruptures are opening up at, and all the arrows on 50, 43, 16, and 30 show the plate motion. And these are all the zones where the megathrust, tsunami, earthquakes could be produced. This is why you should pause right now and subscribe, because we're getting all the information out a lot of people are not paying attention to, and you're going to see a lot more of that coming. Look at this NOAA model for the 1700s Cascadia tsunami. The last one that happened, and if this happens again, we'll have lingering effects all the way to Japan, Hawaii, all those middle zone area. You see where that black zone is at? That's where the Navy shipyard is at. But there's something else you need to know about what the Navy is preparing for with their shipyards being earthquake resilient, because it's not just on the West Coast. They're talking about shipyards in Virginia, also shipyards in other parts of the East Coast. StarsandStripes.com states the project awarded to Keward Albarisi Joint Venture is part of the Pentagon's $20 billion shipyard infrastructure program to overhaul all four of the nation's public shipyards. Look on screen while I state them. I'm going to show them: Puget Sound, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, Norfolk, Virginia, and in Kittery, Maine. So two things I find highly interesting here, and it's no coincidence that the military is going to spend $377 million to reinforce these locations. For one, Hawaii is going to be up to $21 billion, they say, officially. But let's look at this for a second. The one in Maine is right next to that rising hot rock zone. Remember we talked about the rising hot blob underneath the East Coast? Well, exactly. That is a key prime location that has to be prepared for something coming earthquake-like in that area as well as the one on the West Coast for the Cascadia subduction zone. These are two high zones on their priority list. And I found it interesting that Virginia was another one, but there is a volcano there that's supposed to be extinct here. It's in Mole Hill where this volcano sits at. So it doesn't have any activity happening.
Oh, guys.
But the fact that they want to get those bases a little more amped up makes us question what the scenario could be.